And so when you say that Trump or conservatives, they only care about illegal immigration, they're perfectly fine with legal immigration, but then at the same time, they're going and they're getting rid of numerous legal avenues of coming to this country. The reality is that no, they're not for legal immigrants coming here. They want to also reduce the amount of legal immigrants that come here.
I think the law is broader than you read it. The president can pretty much damn near do anything he wants under this law.
It's very concerning to me that like conservatives who constantly, complain about big government and government overreach seem to be trusting of the one part of the government, like the security apparatus, that is most likely to violate your rights and most often does.
I think it's more they're trying to be as terrifying and scary as possible, so you'll leave on your own. Don't make us come and get you. If you're here illegally, self-deport.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Agitation Rising, your source for local leftist independent journalism in Central Illinois and beyond. Today, we have a very special debate that we're going to be doing specifically about immigration. With President Trump's recent re-election and with a popular mandate, including in the polls, for mass deportation, immigration has become a hot-button issue again. And today, I am going to be joined by Chuck Erickson. He is the former chairman of the McLean County Republicans, aka the McGOP. He is a former District 10 McLean County board member and a lawyer. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Welcome, Chuck Erickson, to Agitation Rising.
Hi, how are you?
Living the dream, as always.
Great.
So, the reason that I initially had you on is because you made a post on your Facebook page that I'm going to go ahead and bring up real quick. So you made a post on March 3rd on your Facebook page right after the Oscars when Zoe Saldana, she gave a shout out to her family, including mother and grandmother. She said, quote, "My grandmother came to this country in 1961. I am a proud child of immigrant parents with dreams and dignity." She said she is the first American of Dominican origin to accept an Academy Award and added, "I know I will not be the last." She said she was thrilled by the fact that she's getting an award for a role where she got to sing and speak in Spanish, adding, "My grandmother, if she were here, she'd be so delighted." And your response was so tired of the straw man argument. The left created the straw man argument that Trump is opposed to immigrants, that then rebuts it. No one I know is opposed to immigrants. What they oppose is illegal immigration, and what they support is coming here legally. Geez. So first off, why did you decide to specifically make this comment about a post where they're not really making they're not making the claim that you said?
The reason I picked that post was because there was a lot of things come out of the Oscars that some of the recipients of awards were sitting there saying, "Well, we're for the immigrants and we're for this and we're for that," and then they try to equate it as if somehow, and I believe this is what they try to do. They try to equate this as being Republicans or Trump supporters or MAGA people or whoever you want to claim they are to be. They're against immigration. I mean, I don't know anybody who's opposed to immigration. I mean, I don't. Now, I suppose there might be some, okay? But I mean, I don't know anybody opposed to immigration as long as it's done legally. And I don't think, and too often I have heard in this debate, even whether it been from Zoe Saldana or somebody else, that MAGA people hate immigrants. Well, that's not what it is. Okay, we don't dislike immigrants. We just want the law to be followed. If you don't come here legally, you're here illegally, and we want you to come here legally.
So it's your belief that the Trump administration is only opposed to illegal immigration. He's not opposed to legal immigration. That's your position.
I think there's plenty of evidence to support that. I mean,
okay.
Take it. Go ahead.
So are you familiar with temporary protected status?
No, I haven't studied it that much. I'll talk about the $5 million gold card. I mean, if you want me to talk about that, I mean,
I wasn't going to bring it up. I mean, I guess you can. There are countries that do that. I don't know how successful that program is, though.
Well, we'll see how it is. But I mean, that's not an effort to discourage immigration. I mean, no one's telling people they can't come here. They're just going to make sure you come here legally.
So
Go
temporary
ahead. You had a
protected
question, though.
so temporary protected status is a program that allows people that are here or to come here from certain countries like Cuba, Venezuela, El Salvador, Ukraine, Afghanistan. There's a number of other countries, and it allows them to be here legally and work. And Donald Trump is basically saying he's going to get rid of the whole program, and all of these people will suddenly be taken off of temporary protected status, which means they would lose their authorization to be in the country. Are you familiar with
Well,
that?
I haven't heard that Donald Trump has said that. I mean, what I have heard and what I understand the issue to be is that Donald Trump has said, "Listen, if you're not here legally, I mean, take the student visas too. I mean, they didn't get rid of the student visas. You still can come here. You just can't come here and do certain things. I mean,
Yeah, but
no
they are
one's
saying
telling.
they're going to get rid of temporary protected status. I mean, that's something I believe the Attorney General has explicitly said that they're going to get rid of this status. They also said, like, do you support
Well, if
refugees
they get rid of
coming here?
temporary protected status, I'm confident that they'll do something else in its place. I mean, that they feel is more secure and more agreeable to allowing people who are going to come into this country to be citizens who want to participate in the United States. I mean, to me, if you come to this, let me give you an example. Okay, if I go to France, okay, and I don't think I have a right to expect French people to speak English. I don't think I have a right to expect French people to adopt my former culture. I have to assimilate into their culture. I have to learn to speak French. I have to learn to be a part of their culture. I have to learn to be part of the way their government does things. Okay. Eventually, I may become a citizen. Who knows? But let's just say I did that. Okay. I mean, that's the way I view Trump is what he's doing. He's saying, listen, if you're going to come here, you're going to come here with the intent to become an American citizen. You're going to assimilate. You're going to learn the language. You're going to become an American citizen. That doesn't mean you vote Republican. That doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah,
But
but
you're going to come in here and you go ahead.
immigration law does require that you learn English. Like it
Well, the
already
most
does. It already does
it
require
may
that
not.
with very specific exceptions for like the elderly, because it's just more difficult for the elderly to learn a new language. So, I mean, I hear this about, oh,
Well,
they need to learn English. That's already a
as you know, you
requirement
can.
in immigration law.
Well, as you know, you can have law, and you can have whether it's going to be enforced or not being enforced. Okay, I mean, and sometimes the law isn't enforced. It may require that you speak English. It doesn't mean that the law is actually being applied as written.
Do you support us taking in refugees?
If they're political refugees and they can prove that they're fleeing political persecution, um, uh, I would think they're. Well, I'm confident there already is a process to allow them in.
There is. Donald Trump also said that he's not going to accept any more refugees coming in. He said that last
I
month in
okay,
February.
all right.
Do you
I'm
support?
not going to agree with you. Go ahead.
Do you support?
I'm
Well,
not
look.
going
I
to
mean,
agree with you.
I'll list all the sources in the description, and people can go look them up and decide, what the facts are. Do you support people coming here and seeking asylum for political reasons? Persecution, anything
If
like
they
that.
do it through the legal process, yes.
Yeah,
It's all about following the law. It's all about following the law.
and there are people that have been trying to do that. I mean, they just ended an app program that would have allowed you to sign up for an appointment and go to a port of entry and request asylum, and then they completely got rid of that app and they canceled all these appointments. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that these are all ways in which you can legally come to this country, and the current administration is getting rid of these. So it's actually reducing the amount of ways that you can legally come to this country. And so when you say that Trump or conservatives, they only care about illegal immigration, they're perfectly fine with legal immigration, but then at the same time they're going and they're getting rid of numerous legal avenues of coming to this country. The reality is that no, they're not for legal immigrants coming here. They want to also reduce the amount of legal immigrants that come here.
I would disagree with that. I would say they're trying to narrow the channel. That if you want to come in here, you got to strictly follow these rules because when you say the app program, there were a lot of, as I understand it, a lot of abuses with that. I mean, the goal
What
of it is to
abuses?
make
What abuses are you talking
people
about?
people that were coming in, they were reporting where they were told to show up for a hearing and they never showed up. I mean, and there's no way to follow them. I mean, so I think what they're trying to do is to make all this the app program still there. I mean, but
No, the
you
app
have
has
to
been
come
taken
in.
down. The app does not exist anymore. Just to be clear,
I
that
think
app
it
has been
still
taken
does.
down, and those appointments were canceled.
Well, okay. Well, I think it does, but I mean, but it's just got a different purpose now. But what they're trying to do is to say, listen, we're gonna put everybody into this channel, and you have to follow the law coming through, and we're not gonna let you get out here or get out there. You're gonna just have to come through and follow the channel and the path that we've always had in the past before the Biden administration. We've always had in the past that you have to do certain things to become a citizen. And we're not going to allow you to just come in and then we can't find you and we can't locate you and we don't know where you're at anymore. And we're
Yeah,
just
but
not going to do
TPS they
that
have to go
anymore.
through. TPS, I mean, you have to go through background checks. You have to go through biometric refugees. I mean, the international organizations are very, very strenuous in how they check for people. And again, these are all legal avenues that have been around long before Sleepy Joe Biden got into office. I mean, the TPS program goes back to 1990. Refugee programs, goes back, probably over a century. And then you have the current administration, which is backed by a popular support, saying we're going to get rid of these legal avenues. So I don't know how. I mean, whether you're a legal immigrant or an illegal immigrant is it's just a way that we categorize. We create these
I don't
avenues that you can come here
see.
or not, and if you're getting rid of that, that means you're reducing the ability for people to come here legally.
I don't know anybody who's being precluded from coming here legally. You're just going to have to follow
Refugees
certain.
are. I just told you that refugees are.
No, no, no. I mean, you're still going to have to follow certain channels to get in here. You can't. You can still get into the United States. It's just that we're not going to let you have this loophole and that loophole and that loophole and that loophole and that loophole. You got to come in and follow the straight channel that says this is what the law says and this is what's required, and you're going to follow it. And
These
we're
are the
just going to
laws.
make sure.
TPS is the law. TPS is the
I,
law.
I
The asylum process is the law. Refugee is the law.
you can have all kinds of ways to get around things, okay? And there are always ways to get around things, and all they're doing is closing the way to get around things to make sure that the channel is narrow, is open and but legal.
So I mean, so
We're
I
not
just
going
want
to
to be
let you.
clear.
We're not going to let you flop out of the system, and we can't find you, and we don't know you, and we don't know where you're at, and we don't have anything idea about what you're doing anymore. And you're in our country. I mean, we don't know anything about you. I mean, so
The refugee process is one of the most stringent background requirements in the
that's
entire
fine.
world.
That's fine. I disagree with you that their ultimate objective is to get rid of refugee programs. Their ultimate objective is to make sure they close any loopholes and make sure that it's a way that you can get in to the country that is completely in compliance with the law. And there's no way to find any way to get outside of that.
It sounds as if you're saying these programs that exist that allow people to live here legally and potentially not all of them provide a pathway to citizenship, but some of them do are actually not legal. That these are the loopholes to the legitimate process.
No, 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 no. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, listen, if there is a program that is been abused and misused, okay, you might have to take it down and put another one in place because I do not see, and I've never heard Donald Trump say, or anybody in the MAGA movement. I suppose you might find somebody who might have said it, but I've never heard anybody in the MAGA movement say, we never want immigrants ever again. I mean, I always like to think of it as like if you think about Abraham Lincoln, and there was back in Abraham Lincoln's time, there was a party called the Know Nothing Party, okay? And the Know Nothings didn't want immigrants. Okay. They didn't want the Irish coming in. They didn't want these people coming in. They didn't want anybody coming in. I mean, their position was nobody comes in. That's not our position. Our position is you come in legally. I mean, that's our position. And I think
I mean,
when you say, well, wait a minute, they're going to redo this program, or wait, they're going to take this program down and do it a different way, or wait, they're going to
I didn't
narrow
say they were
this, or
going to do
they're
it a
going to
different
do
way.
that.
They've not said that they're going to do it a different way. They said they're going to
They
end
will.
this program. They have provided no alternatives to these programs.
They will.
I mean, there was just a recent debate about H-1B visas between the like the Steve Bannon wing of the MAGA movement and Elon Musk. And Elon Musk wanted to keep the H-1B visas, and Steve Bannon wanted to get rid of them. I mean, then that's a huge part of the MAGA movement that's saying we don't want these type of visas coming in. We don't
Well,
want these
I
type of
mean,
visas available so that people could come in. And again, that's getting rid of a legal way of coming to this country. I don't know how you
I
can
mean,
square this circle.
well, if they get rid of one legal way to come in to the country, they'll provide another way to come in. I mean, because Elon Musk is more of the view that, hey, if there are talented people out there that want to come in from a foreign country and want to become and want to assimilate to our system, we are happy to bring them in here. There'll be a benefit to our economy. There'll be a benefit to our country, and we want them here. Okay. I mean, that's the way I take Elon Musk's view. Okay. And then you've got the other wing of the party, I believe, that doesn't necessarily oppose them, but they see too much fraud and abuse in that type of system that they think that it's being misused. Okay. So I think eventually what you'll come up with is some way to maintain that program in a way that they feel is allowing people to come in here legally and will be a vibrant part of our country. I mean, I actually, I mean, are you not a child of an immigrant somewhere down your ancestry line? I mean, I know I am. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's one of the reasons that's one of the reasons I'm
I,
very, very pro-immigrant. I've worked in immigrant justice for like 9 years at this point. I've worked very
because
heavily getting immigrants to be able to be here.
what I think you're probably going to see in the long run, although you're not going to see this immediately, okay? There's political reasons why I don't think you can do this immediately. When they get the wall fully built, you will see reform to immigration. I don't know what that type of reform that will take, but I think you will see some paths made easier and some paths made more difficult. But I think there will be immigration reform eventually in this administration at some point. And I don't think it'll be anti-immigrant. It's just saying, listen, here's the door. You want to come in the door, you got to knock first. You got to get permission to come in, and then you got to go through the path legally. And I think that's what will happen because I think there will be some type of immigration reform in the future. I just don't know what it'll look like.
I mean, do you support creating some type of pathway for citizenship for people who are here undocumented?
Well, I think that the problem you're going to have with the MAGA movement and making that move first, okay, they're not going to do the reform first because the problem is they do the reform first and the promise has always been in the past. Okay, we're going to do the reform first and we'll get the enforcement later. Well, we always did the reform and never got the enforcement. Okay. I think you're seeing it switched completely around this time. We're going to do the enforcement first and then we're going to do the reform. I mean, I think that's the problem that Reagan had. Reagan came in and he did do some immigration reform, but
Yeah, that was the
on the
last
promise that
major.
he was,
That was the
yeah, but
last major immigrant reform. Yeah,
on the promise he was going to get more enforcement. Okay, well, the enforcement never comes. So I think the Republicans have basically said, we will do the enforcement part first now, and then we'll do the reform part second. I think because it's hard to go to a Republican right now and say we need to reform our immigration system until you can show to that same Republican that hey, we've actually closed the border, we're actually requiring people to come in here legally, we're actually doing these things. Because what was happening is let's do the reform and we'll give you that enforcement later. We're not going to do that anymore. I think that's what's going on. I think you're going to see immigration reform eventually. I think it's just probably going to have to wait till they actually get some more stuff done
Why do you think there is such a flood of people that are constantly trying to come here?
because it's a great country.
Do you think like what are the specific? Well, why are they leaving their own countries and coming here?
Probably because they see this country as an opportunity to improve their lives.
I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that a lot of people who leave their countries, they don't want to. They leave there because there's a lot of really bad stuff happening. And when you talk about countries like in Central and Southern America or in the Caribbean, these are countries that our government, our foreign policy has actively worked to destabilize and to make these countries more dangerous. And so then people end up fleeing, like they're leaving because they really don't believe they have any other choice, and they end up coming here. And it's something that I've always been bothered with, especially from the party that preaches personal responsibility, and yet we never want to take any personal responsibility for our own foreign policy decisions that actively destabilize countries. Like I believe that the freedom of movement is a fundamental inalienable right, but that includes the freedom to want to move. I don't think most immigrants that take this massive stretch through southern and central America, going through some of the most terrible conditions to try and get here, actually want to come here. I think that they're fleeing because they don't see any other choice, and a large part of it is our own foreign policy.
Well, I think America's, I mean, I view it differently. I think America has been one of the most generous countries in the history of the world. I mean, we've gone out of our way. I mean, we liberated Germany, we liberated Japan, and then we rebuilt it. Okay. It was our money that rebuilt that. Okay. It was our resources that rebuilt that. And I think that's been the history in the 20th century, where the goal has always been that we will give you a helping hand, but we're not going to sit. We're going to give you a helping hand, but now that it's starting to change to say, listen, we gave you a helping hand. It's time for you to start taking some of this responsibility over yourself. So that is
Yeah,
personal responsibility. To address
I
more
mean,
what you're saying, Zach. I mean, Zach, I think what you're saying is Chuck. There are a lot of people in foreign countries that are trying to flee maybe government repression, maybe economic conditions that were caused by the foreign policy of the United States. Okay. I think that's what you're saying. Okay. I
and we're
disagree
not
with
doing
that.
the same. What I'm saying is we're not doing the same thing in these countries that we did in Germany and Japan. We're destabilizing them. We're propping up dictatorships. We're continuing the war on drugs, which prohibition has almost always increased, like criminal gangs and cartels. And so we're not
Well,
doing what we did post World War II in Germany and Italy and Japan. We're just destabilizing it, and then now we have to deal with the consequences of people coming here. I think that it would be far more cost effective if we actually supported these countries in a similar way that we did to Germany, Italy, and Japan. Maybe not, completely taking them over like we did there, but actually trying to help stabilize these countries. I would prefer to spend money on that as well as ending the war on drugs and a number of, ending the sanctions that we have on Cuba and Venezuela that again cause people to flee. Actually trying to work with these governments, I think that would be far more cost effective than militarizing the border, creating a wall that, a shovel can get around, or a ladder or rope. Even like Border Patrol has said that they do not think a wall would actually be effective in reducing either illegal border crossings or illegal drugs and contraband from coming in. I think it would just be far more cost effective if we did my plan, which is actually helping to support and stabilize these governments and making it so people want to stay there, than continuing down this route of militarization and building a wall and private prisons
well,
and profiting off of human misery.
well, to
Because
some
that's
extent,
what a lot
wouldn't
of these
you?
things do.
I mean, to some extent, though, wouldn't you say it's what we tried to do? I mean, we tried to create free trade zones. We tried to open up our economy to Mexico and Canada. We've tried to open up some of these other countries so they can trade, and they can trade on a level playing field with us. And we tried to do all those things. And it hasn't always worked out for us the way we had hoped. Okay. And the idea was that if we go in there and if we do this, this, and this, we'll make them more like us and they'll become like us. But they didn't become like us. And they
Well,
didn't become like us.
I don't see NAFTA as doing that. I mean, just one example with NAFTA is, which was an agreement between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, is that it opened Mexico to our basically our agricultural market. Unlike Mexico, we give enormous subsidies to our farmers. And so then Mexican farmers had to compete with our market, which they couldn't do. So then they end up going out of business, and they end up, coming here basically as economic refugees because they can't afford it. So I'm not convinced that these like free. I mean, this is actually probably one of the few things that I'm slightly more aligned with Trump, is that I don't actually support a lot of these free trade agreements and kind of globalization and stuff like that. I don't think that that's been beneficial to these. I mean, I think that's a neat kind of a neoliberal capitalist grift that these is actually going to help all these countries, and it doesn't end up doing that.
Well, I mean, I possibly, but I mean, back to your point where, I mean, you still can. I don't. First of all, I don't think American foreign policy is so horrible that it's causing such repression in such countries that people can't come here or they're fleeing. But there is a process. I mean, it was the same process back in 1899. People came here because they couldn't make a living where they were doing, or they couldn't because their government wasn't doing for them what they thought it should be doing. And they came to the United States because they saw an opportunity to make a better life for themselves. The opportunity still exists today, but they still had to go through a process. We just didn't say, okay, come on in. Here you go.
Well,
Have at it.
actually, for basically the first 100 years of this country, we did like you came here. There was no such thing as like an illegal alien, an illegal immigrant, or an undocumented immigrant. You came here and you were just on a pathway. It was only with like the Chinese Exclusion Act that we started restricting that. And so when your and our ancestors came here, it was much, much easier to
It might have been, but I
immigrate to
mean,
this
the
country.
world changed. Okay, and and the world changed, and the world's always changing, and you have to keep up with. There are bad countries out there, and there are bad people out there, and sometimes people take advantage of your freedom, and sometimes people take advantage of the goodness and the kindness that you give to them. And you have to make sure that, listen, if you want to come into our country, you have to come in here legally. We have to. I look at it as like, to me, it's more like a, and I know that your side doesn't like this analogy, but I mean, listen, if you're going to come into my house, you're going to be a participant in my house. You're going to have to do things in my house, okay? I can't allow 300 people into my house at once. I can't take them on. I can't do it. Okay. There's no way I can do it. Okay. And actually be able to take care of them. In fact, I think I'd be perpetrating a fraud on them if I said, listen, leave the conditions where you're at. Come to this country. We'll give you better conditions, but you send so many of them over that we can't even take care of you all. We can't do it. Okay. You need to remember that the country is $36 trillion in debt. Okay. And that's a fact. And there's no way to get out of that. And at some point, you generally always have to secure your home before you start allowing people in. And I think
Well,
that's what we're doing.
immigrants pay
But
taxes. Even undocumented immigrants pay taxes, and they take less in taxes away than like citizens do. Like they don't qualify for public assistance or anything like that. They don't qualify for Social Security, so they're giving into the system and they're not getting anything back. So I don't really, I don't see how that has anything
I don't
that's
think the
affecting the
equa- I
debt.
don't think the
So
yeah, I think I disagree with you on that. I don't think the equation of what they're putting in is necessarily always what they're getting out too. Because sometimes I think they're getting more out of the system than they can ever
what are they
possibly
getting
put
out of the
in.
system if they don't qualify for benefits?
They do qualify for benefits in a lot of places. They do.
Not through not through federal programs. I mean, I understand there are
Well,
some
they may go
states
to
and
the
cities
state of
that
California. They
offer
may
like
go to
specific
Sanctuary
benefits.
City. They're getting benefits.
Well, to be clear, like a sanctuary city just means that like you do not work with ICE unless they have a judicial warrant. There are lots of sanctuary cities that offer additional benefits or protections, but you could argue, like for instance, the Illinois. There's a debate going on about health care that we offer to immigrants. Now, you can make the debate that it's more cost effective to give them health care this way than them not having healthcare but just going to the ER, and then we all end up paying more for that anyway. Like that's just a cost benefit analysis. Or people that come that are getting shipped by Texas governors and other governors up here, and they're ending up in Chicago. You create a place for them to stay as opposed to them just being like homeless on the street, which also causes all these other drains. You can make the argument that there's a cost benefit analysis that you're paying some now, but you would pay more if you didn't do that.
I disagree with that analysis. I mean, I don't
Okay.
think that's true. I think that illegal immigration is taking more from the country that it's getting from it, and that you have to slow it down and make people come in on a certain path and in a certain way that you can make the two become equal. The benefit they bring in is also what they take. They're also paying for. I mean, if you have a way to we would love, I think, as a country, to love to say, come here, we'll take care of you. We can't do it. It's just not possible. We don't have the resources. The fact of that is that we're $36 trillion in debt, okay? And there's no way to get around that problem. And we
Well, I mean,
have
you could cut
to.
the military, you could tax the rich. I mean, there's all sorts of
Well,
ways that
you could cut the
you could
military,
deal
you
with
could
that.
tax the rich, but that creates
That'd be
other
nice.
issues for you. I mean, that creates other issues for you. I mean, the country has got to get itself back in a financial stronghold because let's just be honest. I mean, if you don't have your own house secure, you can't help anybody anyway. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
if if I'm not a financially secure person, I can't give money to charity because I got to take care of myself. Okay. I mean, that's the same way it is for this country. We have to financially secure ourselves before we're able to help others. We're just too far overextended, and we have to bring some of that under control.
Okay. Well, people can look up these facts on their own and decide for
Well, I
themselves.
know they can. I mean, that's what you're saying. You could say Zach Chuck didn't say this, right? Go look at this source. Go look at that source. Go look, and then I could get on and say, "Hey, go look at this source, and this source." So, I mean,
And
we
if
could
you
do
if
that
you
forever.
send me your sources, I will make sure I include them in the description so that people can go look. Okay?
Okay.
If you
Yeah,
have sources that you want to
gotcha.
send me, I'm more than happy to include them, and people can make up, their own minds about whether people are paying taxes or not. Because really, the only people that don't pay
Yeah.
taxes are religions. All immigrants, undocumented, otherwise, they all pay taxes. So, like again, the only people that don't pay taxes are religions
I'm not
and
saying they don't pay taxes. I'm
billionaires
just
and
saying,
corporations. So, I wanted to move on. Obviously, recently, this issue's been going on nationally, but it did somewhat come to the fore locally. A very good friend of yours, I know, Corey Byrne, made a post about last month. Let me bring it up real quick. Anyway, I know you
I
and Corey.
remember that now.
Yeah, I
Yes.
know you and Corey Byrne are really really close friends. So I hope that I'm not push you know trying to get in the way of your close relationship. But he posted on January
Appreciate that.
24th. Huh?
I appreciate that.
Good, good. So yeah, this post was done on January 24th by Corey Byrne, who is the current District 10 McLean County Board member, which you also represented District 10. And this was after the Trump administration came out with an official directive saying that basically rescinding previous directives that DHS will no longer avoid targeting schools, hospitals, places of worship, stuff like that, which they for a long time, I mean for decades, they had avoided that. And so a lot of people, I think, reasonably are concerned that there's going to start being immigration raids in schools. So Corey Byrne, who's also a school teacher, he said, quote, there is a well-justified and growing concern about potential immigration raids in our country. The news that schools and places of worship, among others, are now acceptable places to conduct raids is reprehensible and awful. He spoke with our McLean County Sheriff, Matt Lane, and he's assured that the Sheriff's Department will not assist ICE in conducting raids on local schools. And people can further read this if they want. And then, of course, our local insurrection radio, Cities 92.9, basically misrepresented what he said and what the sheriff said by claiming that the sheriff is said he wasn't going to enforce any immigration laws or anything like that, and there was some back and forth. What did you think about this whole conversation around this issue locally, around ICE targeting schools, things like that?
Well, remember, I mean, if I recall it correctly, Zach, and I'm not trying to misrepresent facts, okay, but if I recall it correctly, Sheriff Lane also came out with a statement, and he said, "This is what I actually said." Okay. To be clear to everybody, this is what I intend to do. Okay. And I think he said something to the extent, "I intend to follow the law." Okay. Well, you know, what the law is everybody will debate about. But yes, I believe that what, listen,
So I
reporters
have a
nowadays,
statement. Can I read off the sheriff's statement real quick
yeah, would you
for everyone?
please?
Yeah, so he released his own statement saying, quote, "At no time have I or anyone from my office stated that we would refuse to assist federal agencies on operations involving criminal matters that threaten public safety. I am aware of federal and state laws that will be driving the enforcement action from my office. Simply put, the McLean County Sheriff's Office will be enforcing the law. I would encourage and expect news outlets or anyone seeking what my position is or isn't on a particular subject to go straight to the source and not draw their own conclusions." I mean, I'm not sure how this is different than what Burns stated. Burns didn't state that the sheriff wasn't going to enforce laws or anything like that. He just said that they're not going to assist in raiding schools.
Well, I look at it as being different. I mean, he didn't say, he could have came out and said, "Yes, that's exactly what I told Corey Burney. That's 100% correct." And for anybody to think that I would do anything different would be a misstatement of my intentions and what I plan to do. No, what he came out and said was, "Listen, I'm going to follow the law." That's what he said. Okay, I'm going
But
to,
he
and
also
you
didn't
read
say that
that.
he was being misrepresented.
You read what he said. No,
Yeah,
but
he
then
didn't
what
say that
Cities
he was being
92
misrepresented.
what Cities 92.9 came in and did. And then they said, "Well, wait a minute, he said he's not going to enforce any immigration law." I mean, they basically broadened what they thought he was saying.
Yeah,
And,
they did a straw person fallacy.
well, okay, yeah, okay. But I mean, but in this age where we live in nowadays, okay, it's just like reporters just got to jump and get that story out there first. It happens on the left, it happens on the right, and then they don't check back. They fill the facts in later. Okay, I mean, but she should have. I mean, I was I received an email from her saying I did check with the sheriff. Okay, well, if you read her article, it doesn't really sound like she checked with the sheriff. Okay, I mean, I don't know.
Who
Okay,
specifically are you talking about? I just want to make sure.
the reporter that wrote that, because I went
Uh,
up on
for,
my
for Insurrection
his
Radio? The reporter for Insurrection Radio said that.
I'm not going to call it insurrection radio, but I
Well,
mean,
I'm not going to police your language. I'm just making sure you're talking about the reporter for Insurrection
yeah,
Radio.
yes, the reporter
Okay.
for Cities 92.9. And I came out with a criticism of that article, of the Cities 92.9 article. I said, I don't think that's exactly what you're trying to say the sheriff said there is not what the sheriff said, okay? And that's why the sheriff said, if you have any questions about what my policy is, you should call me first before you report on what my policy is, okay? I think the sheriff will have to figure out, just like every sheriff in the state of Illinois will have to figure out. And that's why you have a federal lawsuit up in the Northern District about how this is going to be sorted out. Where does federal immigration law fit in with local government and the Trust Act, and how you're going to what law prevails when a sheriff is asked to do certain things. Okay, I think because if you're a law enforcement officer in the state of Illinois, you do have a conflict. Okay, you've got your Illinois Trust Act saying you've got to do it exactly like this, and I'm not an expert on the Trust Act or anything else, okay, but you got to do it exactly like this in federal law, which might say, no, this is what you do. Okay. And if there's that conflict, the court's going to have to resolve it. If you're a law enforcement officer, you're kind of stuck because if you go this direction, you might get a lawsuit from the state. If you go this direction, you might get a lawsuit from the federal government. So you've got to get it sorted out how that's going to happen.
Yeah, so I mean, I am more familiar with the Trust Act. I helped lobby to get it passed and other laws like that. And the Trust Act, one, it's resting on the principle that, according to the U.S. Constitution, immigration is the sole realm of the federal government. Right, the states cannot pass immigration laws on their own. They can't enforce immigration laws on their own, etc. That's federalism. That's the beautiful system that we have, and so it's saying, look, we're going to leave it to the federal government to do this, to engage in immigration enforcement. Now, if you come to us and you have a warrant signed by a judge, which means that you have probable cause to, take someone who's undocumented into custody, or even someone who is, any immigrant into custody, then okay, then we will obviously follow that because we have to. But if you don't have something that's signed by a warrant signed by a judge, then no, we're not going to expend our resources to help to assist you when it's clear you don't have probable cause. I mean, that's the main thing. There's other things in the Trust Act, but that's the main thing that the Trust Act is saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So I mean,
and where that issue would come up is, in my opinion, I don't do criminal defense law, and I don't do I've never been a prosecutor, but I mean, where that issue comes up though is does that Trust Act in any way impede the enforcement of federal law in any way? And that's the issue that the court's going to have to resolve. I know you're looking up in this. I can see your facial expressions. That you think, well, it doesn't impede it in any way. All right, well, there is an
well, I
issue
mean, all
that
the
it does impede it. It does impede it in some ways, and that's why the Department of Justice has taken the state of Illinois to court in the Northern District. So no,
yeah, but like,
here's the way federal law is going to be enforced. Here's what you're expected to do. If there's any conflict, federal law prevails.
okay,
So to eliminate that there would ever be a sheriff would be put in a position, or a police officer be put in a position that he's ever in a conflict between his state and the federal government, it needs to be clarified. Here's what you're going to do.
yeah. So do you agree that, like, our basic due process rights technically impede law enforcement? Right? There's restrictions that law enforcement cannot do because we have certain due process rights.
I think that's always been true in this country. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
you've
so
always had.
yeah, and so
I
what?
don't think that you can
But that's
go
what
and just
that's
do
what I'm saying
anything.
is
I
that
mean, there's.
The Trust Act is saying you have to have probable cause, which is a constitutional standard. So it's not impeding it in some type of unconstitutional way. It's just saying you need to go get a warrant signed by a judge. I guess I don't understand why the federal government's so lazy that it can't just go to a judge and get a warrant.
If federal law doesn't require that, I mean, I don't know what federal law requires in immigration enforcement. I don't know what the full import of federal law is on immigration enforcement.
Well,
There are a
again,
lot of.
the state law is just saying you need to have sufficient probable cause and you need to go to a judge. So
But then
I mean,
you could get the lawyers and the sheriffs and the law enforcement and everybody else trying to dispute what is probable cause too. Okay, I mean, so you say probable cause has to meet these standards, and the federal government says probable cause only requires this, and so and
yeah, but
federal
no,
only.
the state would defer to the federal probable cause because it's all they're saying is if you need to have a warrant signed by a federal judge. We're not going to question that federal judge. We're not going to get our lawyers involved, etc. We're just saying that you need to go through the process to get a warrant signed by a federal judge. So that there's nothing in
I'm
the
saying
Trust Act. There's
that
nothing in the Trust Act that
I don't
says,
know. What I'm saying is I don't know what federal immigration law says in their requirements of enforcement. Okay, I mean, I'm not an expert on it. What does federal immigration law say? You have to do this, or you have to do that, or you have to do that. All I can tell you is that the DOJ apparently thinks there's a conflict. And that's why there's a lawsuit sitting in the Northern District. And there will be a judge in the appellate courts that will sort it out. But until that gets sorted out, I mean, you do leave local law enforcement in somewhat of a quandary as to what direction they go.
I don't know.
I
I mean, I think it's
that
clear. You just need to have a warrant signed by a judge, which is, a pretty simple standard to follow. Either they have the warrant or they don't have the warrant. I mean, but that's kind of the main issue with that.
if federal immigration law requires a different type of warrant or a different type of probable cause than what Illinois contemplates in the Trust Act, isn't there a conflict?
No, because the Trust Act says that we defer to federal law. They
Okay,
defer
so that's why
to the judge in the federal law system.
that might be the way you're looking at it. Okay, I'm not saying that that might be the way you're looking at it, but there are plenty of lawyers advising sheriffs around the state that saying, "Listen, we got to be careful here." Okay, because if we go this direction, we could be subject to this, or if we go that direction, we got to be subject to this. In fact, I mean, if I'm a lawyer and I were advising a sheriff's department or a state's attorney's office, I would welcome the district court in the Northern District and the appellate court to tell me what can I do and what can I not do. Will you make it clear for me so I don't have
Well,
to
I
sit
mean,
there and try to figure it out?
it's kind of concerning to me that we have sheriffs and states attorneys that don't understand how to interpret the laws or don't understand how laws are when it's pretty clear that you just need to that's kind of concerning to me actually that you have these people that are enforcing the laws but they don't understand them when it's literally you show up with a piece of paper that has a judge's signature on it, a federal judge's signature on it, and then you can assist in any way after that. That's the extent of the restriction.
Yeah, but
So,
I get what you're saying, but I mean, I wish law were always that clear. It never, I mean, I,
well, I'm not a lawyer,
it
and I
isn't,
helped get this law passed, and I was able to understand it.
it isn't
So,
always, law isn't always clear as mud. I mean, law sometimes is clear as mud. Okay. But, that's the dilemma that I think Sheriff Lane or any sheriff is in, is that if their attorneys perceive that there's a conflict between the two, okay, and they say you can't do this or that, okay, if their attorneys perceive it that way and they don't act, I mean, to me, the attorney would have to take the view that federal law always supersedes state law, okay,
and that's what the
and
Trust Act
that's
says.
the view. That would be the view I would take. Now, I can't tell you how they're reading the Trust Act. I can't tell you how they're reading some of these laws, but that's what's going on.
Okay.
So
Well, let's move on to kind of our final topic that I wanted to discuss with you. In the last month or two, there has been a crackdown on protesters that have protested, certain schools' involvement with a foreign country, specifically Israel. And we basically have, people that, might have written an op-ed, they might have, supported not being involved in another foreign country. And they're basically the government is really just kind of unilaterally stripping I mean, a lot of these people are legal permanent residents. They have green cards. And it's basically saying, no, we're going to get rid of your green card based on your speech, based on some of your views, and we're just going to deport you. And then there's kind of the another issue, which is, the big one was Trump sending like 200 people to this, basically like black site type torture prison in El Salvador, with like no apparent due process whatsoever. So, what are your thoughts on those two issues?
I'm sure they're not going to agree with yours, but let's just say let's say I think I don't always pronounce it. I think it's Tren de Agua. Okay, I don't know how that
Yeah,
if
that's
it,
actually
it
yeah, that's Tren de Agua. So that's talking
yeah,
about
I might have
the
mispronounced
Venezuelans that
that,
were
but I
sent
think
to
it's
El
pronounced
Salvador. Yeah, it's Tren de
yeah,
Agua.
Tren
You
de
said,
Agua.
you said Tren de
Yeah,
Agua. Yeah, correct.
yeah. The Alien Enemies Act. Okay, well, if you ask me about the Probate Act, I can probably give you a coherent opinion, okay? But I'm not an expert on the Alien Enemies Act. But, it does have language in there that this is an act, first of all, that's approximately over 200 some years old. Okay. I mean, the act was, I think it was John Adams who put the act into existence. And Thomas Jefferson hated that law. I'm sure part of the reason he hated the law was because he felt that it gave the president too much power. I believe that's probably what he felt. Oh, he's popping the law up on me and he's going
Yeah,
to
here it
start
is right
citing law
here.
to me. Okay.
Yeah, here it is right here.
In any event, okay, so the law's been out there for over some 200 years, and Democrat administrations, Republican administrations have had ample opportunity to amend or change that law, and they never have. Okay, the law is still basically the same law as it was, as I understand it, when it was passed. Democrat presidents have used that law, and Republican presidents have used that law. They don't use it very much because there's certain requirements in the act that you have to follow before you can actually invoke it. I mean, but they don't use it that much because they can't. But there are some requirements that people think that are a little too broad. If the president feels that there is a predatory incursion coming in. And the president's view would be that, listen, Venezuela and other countries are purposely sending their criminals and their gang members to our country to essentially create chaos and other issues in our country. He can make an invocation, which he has. He's declared that you can't do that, okay? And then he can enforce the act. I believe that's all he's done. He's trying to enforce the act as written. Now I know that Judge, it might be Brosberg. I can't remember his name, but I said, well, wait a minute. What about due process rights? What about this? What about that? What about this? My concern would have been if due process was the fundamental concern about in that act, why hasn't it ever been amended? I mean, it should have been amended to say, okay, but the president can do this, but still there has to be judicial review.
It does say that.
My
It says Section 23 right here. It says jurisdiction of United States courts and judges. And it says, after any such proclamation has been made, the several courts of the United States having criminal jurisdiction and the several justices and judges of the courts of the United States are authorized, and it shall be their duty upon complaint against any alien enemy resident and at large within such jurisdiction or district to the danger of the public peace or safety, and contrary to the tenor or intent of such proclamation from the president, to cause such aliens to be duly apprehended and conveyed before such court, judge, and justice. So it actually says that right there in the law.
Well, it hasn't always been applied that way, and I can tell you that, as you know already, that law has already been taken up before a three judge panel on the district court, and the two judges agreed with the lower court judge, and one judge disagreed. And I got to believe it's ultimately going to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, the last
in my
time this
view,
was the last time this was invoked,
go
because this
ahead.
is only being invoked 3 times during the War of 1812, during World War I and World War II. So actually declared wars. And last time I checked, Congress never declared war on Venezuela. And
That's
it's not
true. That's true. But it has other reasons why you can do it too. It's
yeah,
there's language in there calls it a predatory incursion or some other
yeah.
language about doesn't it
You're
doesn't
right. So
always
I'll
have
read it
to be
out. I'll read it out for everybody. So,
yeah.
or, right, besides declared war, or any invasion or predatory incursion is perpetrated, attempted, or threatened against the territory of the United States by any foreign nation or government, and the president makes public proclamation of the event, all native citizen denizens subject to the hostile nation or government, being at the age, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They can be apprehended. But it's also not clear to me that this gang has any direct connection, and there's been no evidence presented that this gang has any direct connection to the Venezuelan government. In fact, what I've read, I've seen actually the contrary, that Venezuela has been trying to crack down on it in the past several years. I'm not exactly sure why we are going around due process, especially when the law says that you're supposed to get due process, which none of these
Well, I
people that
think
got sent, I mean, none of these people that got sent not back to Venezuela, they got sent to a completely different foreign country into a prison that is known for just horrible human rights abuses, and they may never be able to get out. And they never
okay.
ever received any due process to determine whether they actually were a member of this gang or not. I mean, there's several people. There was like a soccer player who had actually protested the Maduro government multiple times, and because he had a tattoo, which was a tattoo of his favorite soccer team, he was then disappeared to another country. Which we've never actually done. We've never really done this before, where we deport someone to another country to just be like forgotten about in some prison. And back
Well,
in World War II, when this was invoked and it was used for like Japanese internment, which I think most people regard as pretty reprehensible at the time, even the Nazis were given due process. So we gave Nazis due process, but we're not willing to give alleged members of a gang that we don't really have any evidence that they are due process.
well, I'll go back to some of your premises. One, I mean, when you say the premises that this Venezuelan this gang has not been pushed into this country by the leader of Venezuela, I respectfully would say that's not the case. I think they have. I think they have done that in the past. I think foreign countries have pushed. They're criminals. They're mentally ill. They're people that they don't want to deal with anymore, and they let us have them. Then, if you send them in here, and there is some evidence that they may have been trying to cause chaos and confusion within our country, and other issues and illegal activities in our country, that happens. And then you come in and you say, did the president make a proclamation? He did. Okay. He did make a proclamation. And then he invoked the act. Okay. How much judicial review that statute has given um, people in that situation, I don't know that the courts are all in agreement on that, because one judge in the federal district court seemed to, or the appellate court was seemed to be completely in favor of the Trump administration's position on it, and two judges were opposed, but one judge even still said, "Okay, fine, you got to do a little bit more here." But then he said, "You can still detain them. You can still go get them, and you can detain them."
Yeah, I'm not actually
Okay,
arguing against the detainment, but like, what's the to stop the federal government from arresting you and sending you to this prison, and they just label you a gang member?
well, I would concur that that is a legitimate concern, but it isn't normally going to be applied. First of all, the president would have to feel that there's a predatory incursion or a declaration of war, which I don't know how I would fall under a declaration of war. Um,
Yeah, but
I
all
don't
the
know how
government
I
has to do is say, "We don't believe you're a citizen. We believe you're a Venezuelan gang member, and we're going to send you there, and you have no due process." There's nobody that's going to check to make sure you're not a citizen.
well, I would be able to invoke my rights and privileges as a citizen of the United States because there is evidence that I'm a United States citizen.
Yeah, but they're
Okay.
not going to look at it. You're never going to see a judge. That's what's happening. You're
Yeah,
never going to see a judge. You're never going to be able to file a writ of habeas corpus. You would never even.
I think in I think in what's going on is they're not U.S. citizens. Okay, they're not U.S. citizens. They're not. They've been determined to be of a group that's been sent in here to be do certain things, and that they've been sent out. I think as this law continues, I think what really ought to happen is, because you can't have this law being the way it is without some type of if people are going to demand that there be some type of oversight over this law, because I think the law is broader than you read it. The president can pretty much damn near do anything he wants under this law. Okay, okay. Whether that's right is another issue, but that issue should be addressed in an amendment to the bill, not through the courts. I mean, if Congress wants to take it up and say, you know what, hey, this law is too broad, we need to rein it in a little bit, they can amend it. I
But the
mean,
law does say you have a right to go in front of a judge. That's what
well,
I just read you the
yeah,
law. That's what it says from
well,
1789.
it'll be figured out in the courts. I can tell you that. Okay, they'll end up determining what it says and what it means. Okay.
And
Um,
meanwhile, you have 200 people that are, basically. I mean, we won't know if they ever get out of El Salvador, out of this like prison, out of this torture dungeon.
well, you say it's a torture dungeon. I mean, is it? I don't know. I mean,
I mean,
that's
a
what
lot of
you
human
say.
rights groups have also said that.
I know. I know. The human rights groups have said that too.
Do,
Okay,
do,
I'm sure they
do you
have. Okay, but
recognize do you recognize that all immigrants, even undocumented immigrants, have full civil rights? Like the Bill of Rights applies to them?
I'm not an expert on that area of law, but I would take the position that I don't I question whether you have full civil rights if you're not a citizen of the United States.
Yeah, because the
Okay.
Fifth
I
Amendment says
know there's
all
certain
persons.
provisions where it might say in the Constitution, it's how it's been interpreted, that listen, if you come here illegally, can you avail yourself of the same rights of a United States citizen?
Yeah, so the Supreme Court has repeatedly said aliens who have once passed through our gates, even illegally, may be expelled only after proceedings conforming to traditional standards of fairness encompassed in due process of law. That was Shaughnessy v. United States in 1953. The court reasoned that aliens physically present in the United States, regardless of their legal status, are recognized as person, guaranteed due process of law by the Fifth, and 14th Amendment. That was Plyler v. Doe. The court determined even one whose presence in this country is unlawful, involuntary, or transitory is entitled to that constitutional protection. So, I mean, the Supreme Court has repeatedly said over and over, any person, as long as you are a human being in this country, you have
No, I was
full
aware of that.
constitutional
I was
rights.
aware that there was a distinction in the law that said as long as you're a human being, that you can avail yourself of certain rights. But, Congress still gets to come in and say these are, when you say due process, still someone has to define what that due process would be. Okay. Someone has to say, all right, you get a right to a hearing, you get a right to this, you get a right to that. Okay. Has that been done under this act? I don't know that if that act has been in conflict with that president for this long, why didn't some court or somebody else come in and say this act needs to be changed because it's in
Because in the
conflict
past,
with
when they did it,
existing?
those people, in the past, when they did
No,
it, those
the
people
Supreme
got
Court
a
will tell
trial.
us.
Nazis, literal Nazis, got more constitutional protections than immigrants from Venezuela.
The Supreme Court will eventually tell us, okay, what that law means and how that complies with that precedent that you cited. Okay, they will. And but I still think when you say due process, I mean when you say due process, I think you mean they got all this stuff out here. I think when they say due process, the due process is not a set defined term. Who defines what due process should be? The law
The
does.
Fifth Amendment.
Congress is,
The Fifth Amendment's actually pretty clear. The Fifth and
well,
Sixth
but
Amendment are actually
Congress
pretty
will
clear
have
on
to
what due process
right.
is.
Congress, yeah, but the amendments only say you're entitled to due process. They don't say what due process is.
You're entitled to a hearing. You're entitled to tell you what the charges are. You're entitled to go in front of a judge, and a judge can adjudicate. And again,
I
that
believe
same
that's
law in
I believe
1789,
when you say
88
you're
or
entitled to
whatever,
a hearing, you're entitled to a hearing, you're entitled to a thing. I believe that comes out of the law. It doesn't come out of the Constitution. The Constitution just says you're entitled to due process. You're entitled to fairness. But it doesn't say what fairness is.
no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in times of war, public danger, nor shall any person be subjected to the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. That's what it says. I mean, that's what due process is.
It says no person shall be held, but it also said public danger, except in cases of public danger.
Yeah, but I mean, you still need to like go in front of a judge to be able to determine what's public danger. I mean, that's the problem. Like, what
No,
prevents
that's what I'm telling you, Zach. There no you. Someone's got to define what public danger is, and the Alien Enemies Act came in and said a public danger is a predatory incursion. And when the Alien Enemy Act says it's a predatory incursion is a public danger, then the president has almost unilateral authority to do what he feels he needs to do to protect the public from the public danger.
except not put them in front of a judge. That's what that exact same law says.
I understand your position. I mean, but I'm just saying
I'm
that
just reading
when
what the law says, man. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
you can come to me and say, but you skipped over the part. Let's be honest. You skipped over the part that there was an exception for public danger.
I didn't
Okay.
skip over it. I read it out.
Okay. But there is one. It says you're not entitled to some of that, that if there's a public danger. Well, who declares there's a public danger?
Hello, everyone. Future Zach here. I just wanted to add this comment about the Fifth Amendment that says, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger, this only applies to people in the military and military tribunals. It does not just simply apply to an executive says there's a public danger and nobody gets due process anymore. Again, I'm not exactly sure why an attorney does not know this.
Someone's got to declare it. I mean, I suppose the
Yeah.
act says, well, the Congress declares it when there's an act of war. Okay, so act of war is a declared public danger. Okay, so fine, but it doesn't say, it doesn't really define a predatory incursion. It
I
doesn't
mean,
really define it. And the president has felt like he's gone through the process of saying, I issued my proclamation. I feel this issue presents a public danger. Therefore, I can act on the basis of this act. Okay, and you
and no
can
one's
sit there and
allowed to
say, well,
double
yeah, but
check or question it in any way. No one's allowed to make sure that this is accurate or not. That seems to be what the Trump administration is saying. Again, I mean, I hope that they don't come after you and just unilaterally just say, well, we think that you're part
well,
of
I'm
Tren
not worried.
de Agua. Man, I mean,
I'm
sucks
not
to be
worried that
you. I guess we're going to send you to El
I'm,
Salvador now.
I'm not worried that they would. Or that they ever will, because they're never going to be able to argue that that I'm not an American citizen, and they're never going to be
Argue
able
in
to
front of
argue
who?
that I came here illegally.
Who
And
would they
they're
need to
never.
argue that with?
I'm sorry.
Who would they need to argue that with?
They can't just pick you up off the street, okay? But it's a different situation when there's a
Why?
public
Why not?
danger. The
Why
president has
not? Like,
declared that this is an predatory incursion which creates a public danger, in which I have to act immediately to resolve the public danger.
okay, and what I'm saying is like, why would they not just be able to pick you up off the street, which they have done, and send you to El Salvador? What would
Well,
prevent
they
them
haven't
from
picked.
doing that?
I will say they haven't ever picked me just up off the street and
Yeah,
and
but if they
declared.
did, what would stop them from just unilaterally sending you to an El Salvadorian torture chamber?
Because I'm going to take the view that they had to have some form of probable cause to believe that those people were actual members of Tren de Agua, okay, and they had some proof that they were members of Tren de Agua and that they were here illegally. I do not believe they just went out and picked people off the street and said you're out. Okay, I believe that they went in and they had reasons to believe, probably very good reasons to believe, that these people were members of of this gang, that they're here illegally, and that they present a danger to our country, and we have to remove them immediately to resolve the danger.
I mean, there was at least one guy who was like a gay barber who came here, and he had no ties to the gang. Over 100 of those people had already agreed to be self-deported back to Venezuela, and instead of sending them to Venezuela, they got sent to El Salvador. I mean, again, I keep asking you, like, what prevents them from just picking you up? And you said, well, they have good evidence, but they're never going to prove the evidence. They're never going to show us the evidence. Where do they have to show the evidence that protects you from just unilaterally being kidnapped and sent to El Salvador?
The Supreme Court can tell me what they have to do.
Okay, but Trump is not putting anyone in front of any court, let alone the Supreme Court, before he's sending these people to a country that they don't originate from.
No, I think they knew darn well that when they made that move, there was going to be a lawyer that was going to file for injunctive relief with a federal district court judge. They knew that was going to happen. Okay. because the way it happened, they knew what was going to happen. Okay, they knew that was going to happen, and they had him out of international airspace. They had him into international airspace before anything could be done.
Okay, but this is still my point. They did that before any judge could look over anything, could verify anything that they said. I mean,
But what I'm saying is, I get what you're saying. Yeah, there should have been due process. But what I'm saying is that act, if you feel that there should be a different type of due process, it should be spelled out in the act more clearly than it is right now.
it
Because
says
I
you have
don't
to
think
go in
it's
front of a
clear.
judge. That's the bare
I don't
minimum.
think
That's
it's
all it
clear.
says. You need to go in front of a judge.
I don't agree with that. I think the courts have always interpreted that statute extremely broadly to give a president almost unlimited authority to do this, as long, I'm sure, as long as he feels he has probable cause to do it. He's announced that there's a predatory incursion. He's made a proclamation of it, and then he did follow the processes of the act. If you really watch what he did,
Except putting them
they
in front of a judge,
they
which is part of the act.
they did follow the processes of the act. Okay, and then they removed them. Okay, I mean,
Okay.
now going into the future, I mean, to me, I think it was more of a
Spectacle.
they got these guys out immediately. They got these guys out immediately because they knew that future cases were going to be brought before courts. And they did it on purpose, is because they're trying to send a message to people that if you're still here, get out of here on your own now. Because
Yeah, no, I
You see Christy Nome going around saying, "Hey, if you're here illegally, nothing stops you from self-deporting.
yeah, no,
No,
I
nothing."
understand that the Trump administration's immigration goals have been we're going to be as terrifying and strict as possible to prevent people from coming here. Like I understand
Well,
that that's the goal.
I think it's more they're trying to be as terrifying as and scary as possible. So you'll leave on your own.
Exactly. That
Don't make
you and
us
I
come.
are in agreement.
Don't
Yes, you and
make
I
us
are in
come.
agreement on this.
Don't make us come and get you if you're here illegally. Self deport.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'll
Because if
send
you
you
don't,
to.
because if we have to come and get you after, and you wouldn't leave, your chances of coming back in are going to be harder coming back in than if you self deport and try to come back in. That's what they're basically saying. You self deport now, and it'll be easier for you to come back later. Or do not self deport, and we're going to hold that against you when you apply to come back in later because we had to force you out of the country.
Nobody that's in that El Salvadorian prison has any chance of applying again.
Well, I'm not
This
an
is the
expert on
problem.
it. I'm not an ex.
I'm not
I'm not
arguing
an
that
ex.
there's. I'm not
Go
arguing that
ahead.
there's no legitimate reason to deport somebody. I'm saying that if you send them to another country, into a prison, and they have no redress. There is no process by which they can challenge this in any way, including if you were a citizen, because you never went in front of it. You never had the ability to say, here's my birth certificate showing that ICE has no authority over me. None of those people that got sent there, we may never hear from them ever again. And that I think should be a huge red flag. I mean, that there's other countries that absolutely
No,
will just disappear people into black sites.
right now, you have three federal judges who have said your interpretation is correct. There ought to be something, and you've had one judge that says no, there shouldn't be. It'll ultimately end up going to the U.S. Supreme Court, I believe, and they'll tell us what the law will be on it.
We see these infringement on civil liberties, and it's very concerning to me. It's very concerning to me that like conservatives who constantly, complain about big government and government overreach seem to be trusting of the one part of the government, like the security apparatus, that is most likely to violate your rights and most often does. That's what just seems very odd to me.
Well, I get what you're saying. I mean, but I, I have said, and I'll say it again. I mean, I don't think that Trump has been. I don't think Trump's going to be proven to be right in the courts on every executive order he has entered. I don't think he will be. I think the court will
Sure
say
hope
on
not.
some orders you're just wrong. Okay, but I think on most orders he's going to be upheld. Most of them he's going to be upheld. And the reason for that is because, like, our Congress has given our president so much authority to do things by executive order that it just surprises me that, like, why do we have a Congress? If he just comes in there and signs executive orders and
Do
signs
you agree that
executive
that's a
orders and,
problem?
huh?
Do you agree that
Sorry.
that's a problem? That do you agree that that's a problem that Congress has largely abrogated its duties?
In some extent, yes, I do agree with that.
Okay, well, you and I are in agreement. I'm glad we were able to come to an agreement
Yeah, I
on
mean,
something.
I do think they have, but that's they do it for political reasons. I mean, it's easier to kick it off on the president and blame him than it is to say, "Hey, we could actually do something about this." Well, they don't do anything about it because what happens is like when I mean, I mean, I would like to see, and I think this will happen. I mean, I know a lot of things that I know that Trump's trying to move quickly now, and he's trying to move very fast. So you're always trying to figure out what he's doing. I think that's by design. I
It
think he's
is, yeah.
doing it on purpose. I think there's no question he's doing it one right after another to just keep them always fighting and flailing as to what's going to be his next move. Okay, but I think Republicans should also have to realize that at some point, if you don't take care of these things by acts of Congress and by legislative design, the next president comes in and just signs a whole bunch of executive orders and they're all gone again. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
and I,
that's a big problem. Yeah,
yeah, the next president, and they're all gone again. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, it can't be that way. I mean, some of the stuff has to be like the president can do this. I mean, we do have co-equal branches of government. They do have to be co-equal. I'm not saying the president should be the lord over everything, and I'm not saying Congress should lord over the president either. I'm not saying that either. But that balance of the proper that balance of the separation of powers will always be a debate that we'll have till we die, and it'll be continued on to the next generation. I
okay.
mean,
Well, that's mainly all the questions that I had, and I think we had a good debate. I do hope that no one from the government just shows up and kidnaps you and deports you. I
I'm
just want
pretty.
to let you know that I'm going to support your civil rights, even if you're not, necessarily going to support other
I would
people's civil
appreciate
rights.
it if
So
you would. Yes, thank you.
you're
Yeah, if
welcome.
they
You're
showed
welcome.
if they come after me because I might have some conservatives come after me. Why are you talking to Zach Gittrich? Why would you even do that, Chuck? What would ever possess you to go talk to Zach? Okay, and I just take the view. I mean, why not? I mean,
You and I are good friends. You and I have talked before.
it's just like, I mean, I'm sure I'm going to catch some flack from some people. It's like, why would you even talk to him? Okay. And,
Well,
and, and it's just, I don't view the world that way. I mean, you do have to talk. I mean, you can't avoid having disagreements about things. So, I mean, but if someone should come and arrest me, I would appreciate if you would stand up for my civil rights. Thank you.
I will. You let me know if you're able to call me from El Salvador. If I'll give you my number, you write it
Okay.
down or something on your arm, and I'll call the local ACLU, and they'll do the best to get you out before you get shanked or something like that, or get
Well, I
tortured to death
appreciate
or
that.
anything like
Yes.
that. So you're
Yes.
welcome. And you're right. There were some people on my side that questioned why when I told them I was going to debate you. They questioned why I would do that, and they don't realize I just love doing this. I just have fun. This is fun
I
for me.
know. I
So
mean, I don't know why people feel like, I mean, it's one of the hardest things I ever had to do when I was even on the county board was, so I just stopped doing it. I mean, you talk to one of the Democrats? Well, Corey, occasionally I have to talk to them. I mean, what do you want me to do? Act like they don't exist? I mean, what are you going to do? But there's Democrats that are the same way. You talk to one of the Republicans? Oh my God, how could you do that? I mean, you do still have to there has to be a time to take your stand and stand on your values and plant your flag and fight on your hill. Okay, there also has to be a time when you have to go talk to somebody and you have to see, hey, how do you see this and how do I see this, and I'm not going to get everything I want and you're not going to get everything you want, but maybe we can come up with something that we can get something done. So, it happens. I know people hate me when I say that. I mean, it's just like, but I know that's the way government is. I mean, it is sometimes people talking to each other. I mean, it does have to happen. There's no way you can run government without people talking to each other.
yeah.
It just
Well, again, I appreciate you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you.
And I hope everything goes well for you. And I'll talk to
All
you
right.
later.
All right. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for turning into that debate. Let us know in the comments what you think, who won on what points. Definitely check out the description for all the resources, all the citations, and everything like that. Like, subscribe, share, do all the YouTubey things. Keep agitating, keep rising, and we'll see you on the other side. Thanks.